Why is it so important to drive so slow on sites? It doesn't matter which one you're on because we can't afford accidents. Even if you had two cars that bump fenders and someone takes that and shares that information, and next thing you see on the paper, accident at nuclear facility, everyone loses their mind. If you can't drive the speed limit, if you can't hold the handrail, if you can't put pop in the pop machine, small things, how do we expect you to do the big ones?
Have you ever noticed how some of the strongest leaders are often the people who quietly step forward, solve problems, and earn trust through consistent action over time? In my conversation with Andy Forsythe, we explore the experiences that shaped that mindset, from early leadership in martial arts to policing, nuclear operations, large-scale refurbishment work, and leading through moments of intense pressure and uncertainty. Throughout Andy's story, a consistent pattern emerges: noticing gaps, building relationships, earning trust through execution, and finding practical ways to move people and organizations forward. Our conversation reflects on leadership, discipline, accountability, and the kind of steadiness that allows people to lead effectively in complex environments. Join me now as I split atoms with Andy Forsythe. Andy Forsythe, welcome to the Splitting Atoms podcast studio. You're already smiling at me like you're going to be trouble.
You make me smile every time I'm near you. So.
Well, because most of the time when we get together, it's jokes and laughter, and we don't keep straight faces very long.
Which is good, because there's enough straight faces in life. We don't need to do that 24/7.
I would agree. I would agree with that.
And we work in a sector that doesn't always smile as much as it should, because it's a very serious sector. But when you get those moments of downtime, take them a ride.
We're changing that, aren't we? We're bringing the pure joy to nuclear.
We're splitting something, not just atoms.
That's right.
Right.
So, Andy, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
A quick rundown for our listeners. Could you give just a 60-second high level of Millwrights?
Millwrights. All right.
Of the organization.
All right. So currently I am fortunate to represent 10,000 members of the Millwright Regional Council across Canada. I'm the Vice President of Business Development, and in that role I do my best to be out there supporting our membership and working to get as much market share as possible so that we can make sure our members can put food on their table. At the same time, we want to increase our market share. We want to get more members. That's what unions do, and we touch all elements of the industry, not just the nuclear, obviously, and the construction industry as well, but all the energy sector, airport, conveyor systems, Amazon warehouses, auto sector, oil and gas. Mining.
You're in everywhere, man.
Yeah, so the millwrights, it's a very, very incredible trade with highly skilled people. And like I said, they touch industry in many, many ways. So it's a real honor to represent them and being out to what I do.
Wonderful. And now we've already alluded to this. You and I are a little bit of, I would say, class clowns. We naturally like to make people happy, laugh. I would say we're both a little bit natural leaders. We bring people together. My question for you, my first lead-in, have you been like this since childhood? Because I always have.
Yeah, no, I've had a very difficult time being serious about a lot of things, but class clown at times, always running lead and having no problem speaking my mind. So it was just part of me naturally, and that evolved itself into sports. It was always either the captain or a leadership position on the team, all the way up through school. It's been just kind of me. Don't know why. It's a neat thing to have, but it's also one of those things that comes with some baggage at times. The expectation of yourself gets high.
Well, so I was the one that always got on my report card, Caitlin can be a distraction. Caitlin talks too much. They'd move me around. I think they missed the mark. They should have put Caitlin shows a unique ability to network and connect people. However, she needs to learn to focus this energy. They always wrote it as if it was a negative instead of reframing it. Did you get those similar?
That word focus was written a lot. I still actually have my all my report cards.
You do?
Yeah, my parents like to keep them to remind me that there was times that things were more difficult than others than they needed to be. But at the same time, we won a lot of events because someone has to run lead, right? And that leading piece has been a positive monkey on my back for a lot of years.
And you, when you were younger, you got involved with martial arts, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, young, probably at the age of 14, I started doing martial arts, and it became a pivotal piece of my life, all the way from 14 until I probably stopped teaching martial arts 3 years ago. But all in various areas. I started with Kempo Karate, and then I did boxing, and then I did jiu-jitsu. And, then I got into a different part of my life and my career, but the martial arts became a very big part of me. And I think in some ways it plays a contributing factor to what your development looks like. And I was just talking to a young lad about this the other day. But it builds your confidence to a point that that fear that some people have goes away, because you don't need to worry about walking in a room because you can walk back out.
Physically, you mean?
Physically.
It gives you a physical safety because
Yeah.
you know you can take care of yourself
Right.
and protect yourself.
Yeah.
So it eliminates that element.
Yeah, it gives you
Interesting.
presence in a way that maybe it shouldn't, but it does take away part of that, the fear that we all have, that inner fear that says, I don't feel comfortable in this space. That comfort becomes natural.
What else did it give you at that age in life? What other skill sets or attributes do you think it started really sharpening for you or introducing for you?
Well, I think that level of courage or the inability to back down from things naturally progress you into a spot that you didn't mind running lead. So, if there was a problem ahead of you, you go after the problem, right? And it just became one of those things that I naturally would do, and not always ever understanding why. You know what I mean? It was kind of, all of a sudden you're on the other side of this barrier and you go, okay, I'm not sure what just happened, but I got here somehow. And it's that level of confidence. And when you have it, part of it is hard to control. Right? You have to put a leash on it. But at the same time, when those moments you're in life and something feels funny, it allows you to climb yourself back out.
Interesting. And that is something I think you've carried through for your entire career, this ability to have the discipline maybe of seeing something and then doing something. Having the confidence not only enter the room, take notice, assess things, and then make changes or step into a role.
Yeah, I mean, once you come out of high school, I very early left high school and went into a career. And I started on the police force at the age of 19.
Was that always the plan?
It's a very interesting
Did
question.
you grow
Was
up
it the
wanting
plan?
to be a police officer, or?
There was reasons for me to go down that path. I have an uncle that was an RCMP. And when I went into that situation, I was pushing back a lot. My father wanted me to go to university. It was a big thing. I'm trying to remember what age I would have been, probably 16 or 17. Sitting at the table, and he said, hey, if you don't go to university, you'll never own your own house. So I thought, perfect, I'm not going to university. And that became this pivotal piece in Andy Forsythe's life. And off I went right out of high school, right into the police force at 19 as a cadet, or they called us cadidiots at that time. But, it was the entry piece. You had to be 21 to carry a gun. So you started as a cadet, and it was kind of like a pre-test or a trial run to be a police officer. And it was, the kind of beginning of the learning about who I am and what does that transition into. So tie that back to your other question. Did that show itself then? It did all the time. I always stepped forward when maybe some shouldn't, but I always found myself stepping forward.
Well, there's also this element of you weren't afraid to choose your own path. Here's your father saying, here's the path you need to take to get X, Y, and Z.
Right.
In this scenario, buy a house and have the stability that comes with what he thought you should do. And you saying, no, that doesn't feel right to me. And maybe a twinge of, teenage rebellion. But it's still this thought of you wanting to do and go the road that you wanted to go down with the police force. You obviously had an influence with your uncle, and you saw opportunity there. You have this very interesting theory that I love. You explained it to me recently about we're all just water. Can you walk us through that? Because I think this is a moment where you as water went down the hill the way you were going to go.
So, my analogy to you was you take a bucket of water at the top of a hill and you dump it. It doesn't matter which way it goes, it's going to the bottom. So it might get to a spot and take a left, it might take a right. It might self-correct. It might go back the other way, but it doesn't matter because it's water. It's always going to find its way. And, it's kind of become a part of me from that time in my life till yesterday. Like it has never left me about having courage to say it's okay to fall, right? It's okay to go into something and make an error and learn from it, right?
It's a different analogy of what's meant to be will kind of be. Have the courage to keep moving, but don't worry so much about the little turns in the path, because as long as you're moving in the right direction, you'll land where you need to land.
Yeah, and I think, I'd say in industry, there's a lot that worry too much about whether that left turn or right turn was right, because you never know. But the best part about making a left or a right is it's a decision, and that decision will always find itself to the next one, whether it's a right or wrong decision. It's another chance to learn and to grow.
So as you enter the police force, you go through your stage in the cadets. Then what does that look like, and how do you start to develop into who you are today through your work in the police force? You were on the dive team. You went through quite a career there on the police force.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, policing is such an honorable career. To the point, I left it after 20 years, but, in the early stages, I always like to try different things. So you talk about the dive team, and I was just saying to one of the individuals in the hallway here that, to be a police diver means you're going to pick up bodies on the bottom of the lake. You're going to go find guns. You're going to do all those things. And people would say, well, why would you do that? And you'd say, because someone has to, right? Families need closure. Who picks their loved one off the bottom of the lake? I'm good. I love diving. That was my functional diving for work, and it's something I did. I ran the team for 9 years. And then when I went and dove in Jamaica, that was just peaceful. You'd fall off the boat. I'd close my eyes when I'm swimming and just love the fact that no one could yell at me, and it was a peaceful place on earth that was mine, right? So that was the dive team component. But, I always wanted to be a SWAT guy. Did a lot of testing into that, combine that with the martial arts component. I had 2 real glorious years walking the beat in downtown Oshawa. I'd tell you stories here, but I'd have to, swear you to secrecy because that was a whole different world.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The world becomes very interesting at 3 o'clock in the morning when all the lights are out.
There's a reason most of us are sleeping.
Exactly. And I always made this joke, all the people at home with their heads on their wee little pillows don't understand that the world becomes dark and scary at 3. And I enjoyed that part, but then I became a use of force instructor, so I was teaching use of force, martial arts, firearms. I did that for just shy of 3 years. I went and taught at the Ontario Police College for a 10-week tenure down there, which was an incredible experience. And I went back, and then I ended up, this is kind of the funny path, but OPG had a contract with Durham Police to provide security to Darlington and to Pickering.
Okay.
After September 11th. And, they had 12-hour duties before they built the contract that you'd run out there in a cruiser, drive around those sites for 12 hours as a paid duty. And then the OPG made a decision that was a very expensive way to go. So they thought, well, we'll build our own armed response team on site. They didn't have anything of that nature. So they hired myself and 12 other ex-officers. We became ex-officers to build that armed response team. And, I think that was 2008. Not that the dates really matter. It's the journey. But when I joined OPG, I thought, what is this? You come from, a world where you're driving police cars at 120 kilometers through a downtown to all of a sudden you got to hold a handrail. And people are coaching you avidly if you don't get it. And
the culture difference.
The culture started to kind of step in. And, I learned some incredible things, I'd say, in that time.
Yeah.
So it's just another example of something that if you're not on the inside, you can't see from the outside. And, one thing I had to do was embrace this new environment that I was in and not think that I was still the policeman that entered it, because I wasn't. Cape was gone, right? That was my history. This is journey number 2.
And so jumping back a little bit, so with the police force, your introduction to nuclear was because you were hired in. by OPG to come
Correct.
in and start servicing them directly. Was that your first introduction to the nuclear sector? Did you have any real understanding of nuclear before that? Or
Caitlin,
did
I
you
was
just
afraid
stumble?
to go down the hill.
Okay, so you were one who you really maybe had some misconceptions even about nuclear before you entered in.
I had zero exposure to it except for the fact that I started my career in policing in Bowmanville. And I knew that at the bottom of the hill, at the other end of Holt Road, there was stuff going on down there that I didn't know about. Therefore, I don't need to drive down there. And, you know, it's interesting how life pushes you, like water, down that hill, pushes you in directions that you don't plan. You know, to be able to say now that I've been in the vault, I've been in during an outage. I've seen the fuel machine onto the calandria face.
And just for people who are listening
sorry.
who maybe don't know nuclear as well, the vault is where the nuclear is created. That is
correct.
where the reactors live. It's a highly sensitive area. Not a lot of people get to go in, but it's such a neat area to
Yeah.
get to experience. It's such a cool world.
And I've always liked to do something that most people might not find comfortable. And to have that chance has been amazing. And sorry if I go off trail there a bit, but, you know, when I made the decision to leave the police force, it's because at times during anyone's career, you feel like it's time to make a turn. There's a pivot coming and you don't know why, but your gut says, off you go. So joining OPG in that first part was running a tactical team as a tactical sergeant, right? You know, all the gear and the bucket and the long guns and all that stuff that we built those teams with, who you see around the sites at Darlington and Pickering and the Bruce. And
I love this because one of the common themes of this has been, in more conversations that I'm having, is this concept of opportunity that lives here. A lot of people wouldn't think of, oh, I'm in the nuclear, or could I be in nuclear from a security perspective? We have emergency response teams, some of the best in the world.
oh yeah, they win a
that
lot
are
of
here.
awards.
That's right.
Yeah.
One of my good friends, her husband used to compete on Bruce Power's
Right.
fire team,
Yep.
which is incredible. But it's just kind of a very brief little talking point here, because anyone listening, I hope they grasp the diversity of jobs that are available here.
Yeah, it's-
Because you would never think just a police officer, you came into nuclear because of proximity and then your position within the police force. But it's not just technical jobs and opportunity that live here. If you want to be an elite member of kind of a SWAT type team, there's opportunity for that here.
Oh yeah, and you know they
So
they
cool.
have the best of the best, right? Their equipment's fantastic. So therefore the teams that they put on site are top. They're elite. Their fire systems, their fire officers are elite. They train. They have the opportunity to train to a large standard, and with that becomes a great response when they're needed.
I think many of the jobs in our sector, now I know I'm biased, I think a lot of the jobs in our sector bring out the elite. Our industry really makes sure it's the creme de la creme that come in and the opportunity for it.
And there's a reason. You got to be the top of the top when the asset is that important. So it's not, you can invert this thing whichever way you want, pick it up, pick it down, but a fire in a nuclear facility is a horrific thought. So therefore, how do you fix it? You train up your team to be so good that even if there was an option for it, it's gone quick. Same with security. It's not an option for your social license, for your community to not think that it's safe. What's happening at the bottom of the hill is about as safe as you can get.
We take such accountability. It's amazing. The thought process to me of how we plan out for things, not only just safety and care, but even our waste systems and the thought and accountability that comes with our sector, I think is greatly underappreciated by people who aren't aware, who are ignorant
Yep.
maybe of that level of responsibility we take. It's fascinating.
And even in one of my roles at OPG, one of my last roles at OPG was the director of construction for the Unit 2 refurb. And I had to do a lot of speaking engagements on that front. And you think about, why is it important for things that seem so simple to be so focused upon? And for example, site driving. Why is it so important to drive so slow on sites? It doesn't matter which one you're on. You go to Chalk River, it doesn't matter. They all want the speed to be so slow because we can't afford accidents. and accidents aren't good. Even if you had two cars that bump fenders and someone takes that and shares that information, and next thing you see on the paper, accident at nuclear facility, right? Everyone loses their mind.
Yeah.
Not realizing it was two cars that bumped together bumpers and nothing really happened from it. But it's all about the behavior. If you can't drive the speed limit, if you can't hold the handrail, if you can't put pop in the pop machine, small things, how do we expect you to do the big ones? Right? And those evolutions, the people that work inside of these plants, whether it's the building trades or whether it's our own internal workforces at OPG, they're brilliant, and they take things to a level that they need to. We're not welding together two pipes in a ditch. We're welding materials that are moving heavy water, right, which is one of the main foundations of a CANDU unit. We're moving heavy water.
Which is a CANDU reactor. That is the type of reactor. All of our reactors currently in Canada are CANDU technology,
Correct.
which are some of the safest reactors in the world.
Correct.
Made, of course, by one of our industry heavyweights, Atkins Realis, and their CANDU Energy Group.
Yeah, and so when I look at it now, and you really understand why are these things that seem so simple, why are they so important? And then you tie it back to what that level is. That power is gold to society. And I want my lights to turn on. I want everything to work at my house.
We got to be able to charge our cell phones.
Right. That's
the world
that
would
true.
go into chaos. What would we
I
do?
should maybe turn mine off. But, I'll tell you, once you really learn to understand it and respect it, you'll never turn the other way. It is that much of a very special and unique thing to be part of. I'm honored to have spent the time I did in that role. But we got a lot more coming. So that's even more exciting.
So it's funny. So I guess what I'm hearing is if Disney World is the most magical place on Earth and Disneyland is the happiest place on Earth, nuclear sites are the safest place on Earth.
Yeah,
That could be our tagline.
It could be, and I've been to both.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of fun at Disneyland.
Yeah.
And we've talked a bit about that. But,
Yeah.
the plants are...
Of course we have.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah, that's true.
Of course we've talked about Disney. And so when you first entered in and were working on the security side with OPG, what did you notice about the integration of security operations with day-to-day operations? Because I think you saw an opportunity for even more connection between the plant's operations and what was happening in security. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. I mean, what I saw is a security force and I saw a operating nuclear facility. I didn't see a lot of integration and communication between those two. The security part did what the security part does, which is very important. The plant did what the plant did. But I thought, wow, what a chance to educate one another about the importance of each other's position. And, not that security doesn't understand their grounds and doesn't know where they need to go as far as their fences and all that stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about culture from the nuclear side of the business. Nuclear, my dad always corrects me on, nuclear. And the nuclear side of the business understands security. So, in the morning every day they had what they call an SMSB station. It's a station briefing, that shift manager station briefing that occurred every day. I started to go over there and sit inside those meetings and listening to all these acronyms, and I'm ready to pull my hair out if I had some. But,
For anyone listening, Andy does not, in fact, have any hair. So you did that. You set yourself up.
I did.
I would not have brought that into this conversation.
And I'm not going to tell you how this happened, but maybe someday I will, just not today.
So you would go and sit on these briefing meetings, which
Correct.
was new. This was a gap you saw that you stepped into.
That's correct.
Okay.
At that point, I hadn't seen anyone from the security side, the security building, sitting inside the station briefing, learning the acronyms. If there was messaging that had to come from the station, it went through the top and back down instead of having people integrate with one another.
Okay.
Get to know each other. Learn your names. Learn what the heck the acronyms are, because that's a whole other different world. And I thought, well, there was a monthly article that came out from the station. Maybe I could join in. So I contacted the editor of that and I said, have you ever thought of having a security component in this magazine? They said, no one's ever approached us on it. And I said, I think I'd like to try that. So I began providing a monthly security article to this flyer that went out there, and it was actually a lot of fun. I think there's a picture of me, and I should have brought them with me. I got to remember to bring them to show you, but as much as this isn't true, but they had a picture. I had a picture with my head placed on the Hulk's body as part of the security piece when we're trying to work through evolutions, and it became a bit of a really great game of helping and learning off each other. That kept up for the whole time I was in that role at security, and I think it gave me a great opportunity to learn, but I had to go get it. And I think that's the part that everyone should always try to do, is stretch yourself beyond what feels good. I didn't know a thing about the plant, like what's happening in the plant. So I learned a lot, right? And that provided an opportunity. I think I was probably in my security role for just a little over a year. And the maintenance manager from Darlington reached out to my director and said, will you release him? And obviously I wasn't part of that initial conversation, but he called me and he said, Andy, the maintenance manager wants you to come over and work in maintenance. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I don't know maintenance at a nuclear plant.
What are you maintaining?
So he said, well, I don't know what it means either, but I've never had that happen. So I said, well, let's do it. So I went over and I started as the section manager of maintenance contracts, and I was managing a multi-million-dollar budget. Understanding I came out of high school, I don't have any post-secondary education. I went right into the police force. But everything is pretty simplistic when you break it down. If you're that type of person that kind of dilute it down to something that's more digestible. And I was doing lots of different contracts. I was doing bringing in all the contractors for outage work. And these were significant evolutions that had a lot of tight timelines to it. Imagine what a reactor earns in profit in a day. So when it's off, it's not a good thing.
Yeah,
Gotta
that's right.
get back to work.
It's very costly when they're off for maintenance. Yeah.
So in doing that, again, I was exploring new things that I'd never done. And part of that was educating others who weren't used to dealing with somebody like me, who came from a different world. That I'm a very type A, more type A than I am now, but a very type A person that loves leadership, loves to work in that triangle of authority, and making sure that we all fly true, like the.
Question for you, quick question. What gave you, first of all, the confidence to not only see a gap, but to then say, I'll be the one that starts filling that gap or bridging the gap? And two, how did you always do that in a way that aligned with the organizational structure within? Because obviously in organizations like at OPG or anywhere really, there's structure in place. So how are you able to say, there's a gap, I'm going to go and start bridging that gap, and not get in trouble with stepping beyond the confines of your role? Because there is a conversation there about how you do that respectfully.
That's a really good question, Caitlin. And I remember when I was in security, and every day when they had to come through the gates. Obviously, like you've done it yourself, it's a pretty.
My car has been searched.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting process. But I had the great opportunity to have a lot of the senior leaders come through the main security building, and when I was still operating in my security function at that time, I had the chance to meet them, and took the opportunity to engage with them to try to get to know them, because I thought, what an amazing thing. And the one that brings my mind, Stu Seathouse was the senior VP of Darlington. Super guy, like just salt of the earth person, right? And I thought to myself one day, this security thing's okay, but I'm really enjoying what's happening when I go over to those morning briefings. So I called Stu, and I don't know how we got through. His admin at that time, Nicole, she let me through to him, and I said...
His EA?
His EA, yes.
Yeah.
She knew who I was as well. And I said, Stu, do you have 5 minutes? So he said, sure. And I thought, okay, there's step one. So I go tripsing over to the ESSB, the engineering building, and I said, I've really enjoyed our chats. You've taught me a lot. Would you be my mentor? He looks at me and moves his head around a bit, and he says, no one's ever asked me that. Sure. So off we went on this journey together, and at that point, obviously, I was in that section manager or maintenance contracts piece, but running outages isn't a lot of fun. You've got a lot of work that's on. There's a lot of pressure.
It's a high pressure.
But Stu was always there to bounce things off of. I'd call him on a Friday night and say, I'd have my vent. And he'd say, just breathe through it, right? And he was just that kind of person. And he was that by nature, like not even just at work. He was that way out of work as well.
That was just his leadership style.
Just
is
his
who
leadership
he was,
style, yeah.
to be there, to be open, to give guidance while allowing you to set your own path, and to kind of absorb sometimes some of the things you need to get off your chest without letting it dictate
your
actions.
And I think some of it is really, we believe things are set in stone. Caitlin, right? They aren't always set. There's things that are fluid. And the more you understand that and appreciate that, the less tense and pent up you get. So when you become that leader that wants to make decisions, you sometimes have to make them without 100% confidence that it's the right way to go. But it's the way to go. You look at all the movies you watch where people are running away from trauma. They don't know whether to take a right or a left turn, but they got to move somewhere. And I think that's where leadership gets to where it needs to be, especially in the industry. Someone has to take the step, we're all waiting for those steps now as we look at wanting to move forward into the large-scale nuclear builds. But Stu taught me how to feel okay with that slight wobble.
Yeah.
Right? You feel like you're stable enough that it's there, but it's not going to kill you. Just hold your line, right?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will also call back to earlier in our conversation. See, this is where our report cards should have said keen interest in networking. If you had not been the type of characteristic that was willing to say, first notice that I'm seeing all these people come through the gates every morning, I might as well just be a friendly human being, say hello, and have a conversation. That would not have opened the door to a relationship and a comfort in asking those questions of someone else. So it's, again, I call back to that natural attribute or that comfort, and it doesn't come as easily for some, but sometimes I think it's so imperative that we don't forget to just be a kind person. If you see a human, say hi to the human, right?
Fully agree.
Because that without those conversations, those gate conversations you had, you may have not had Nicole sent you over to Stu, right? There wouldn't have been that relationship.
And it happens in so many ways. I mean, and I could run through my whole career thinking of times where someone likes to think they're more important and they're better. Nobody's more important and nobody's better. We're all the same. We happen to do different functions. But in policing, if I was hanging off the edge of a building and someone reached down with dirty hands, would I not grab a hold? Sure, I would. Right? The person that cleans the washrooms in a facility are just as important as the person that leads the facility because we all need to feel comfortable. And, you talk about the word human. When you wake up every day and you find purpose to help other people find peace, it automatically feeds itself backwards.
Which ties back so beautifully to earlier in your career, one of your reasons for doing the dives. Those families deserve justice. They deserve answers. And that kind of has carried you through your career in so many ways of you do it because it's the right thing to kind of do. And filling those gaps makes people's lives easier in many ways and more aware, like more fully aware of the work that they're doing and the impact they're having.
Yeah, and I think, we all want impact. Right, we all, and that impact doesn't have to be in our personal lives, doesn't have to be in our work lives. We just all want impact as humans. It goes back to that having that nurturing feeling as a baby. How does that connect itself? It connects itself to the day we go back to the earth. And I think the important part, my favorite saying in the world is from Marcus Aurelius, and it says, "You have the power over you, not outside events. Realize this, and you'll find strength." What does that mean, right? Look in the mirror, right? That person is the solution to everything.
I like that.
Happy, sad, whatever, fix it. If you don't like it, fix it.
It's such a an accountability to oneself. We really We really are the only person coming to save ourselves, to move ourselves, to endorse ourselves, to pick ourselves. I like that.
And the more that, we rely heavily on others, the more dissatisfied we'll be because they can't really find their way fully into you. Only you can find your way into you. And I think that's the part we have to understand and respect that little child.
Now walk me through. So you're working on the refurb. You are at this time, right, with Stu? Have we gone into kind of refurb?
No, not yet.
No, not yet. I've jumped ahead.
No, it's great. Jump away because this path is very unpredictable.
Well, much like our conversations.
Oh, sorry.
But also, I know, and something I want to chat to you about is you had to lead at a time where you were facing something completely unprecedented with no playbook, and that is when the pandemic struck.
Yeah.
So walk me through where you were in your career in 2020 when the pandemic had struck and you were having to kind of go without a playbook.
Yeah, so at that point, I was the director of construction for Unit 2. And
Unit 2
at Darlington.
That's right.
The first unit that we refurbed.
So
they celebrated it yesterday, I believe. But with that role, actually, I was just coming out of the operational piece, the movement piece down in the plant and transitioning a new person into that role. And I became the director of vendor oversight and vendor relationships kind of and contractor oversight. So I was the point of contact for the trades, just like I was in the role when we were doing the work. But now I was I like to call myself grandpa at the head of the table with the building trade unions.
Okay.
And hence, look where I am now. But COVID hit. We were in a pretty important component of the refurb. Refurb had a ton of risk that was applied to it. $12.8 billion project, and all of a sudden now we get hit with something we've never been used to.
It's incredible. Really.
It was like holy rain. It was coming down, and you're like, how do we keep this project going safely? Safety is number one at that
Always.
facility. The reality is the work couldn't stop. We needed to find a way to manage the work and manage the people at the same time. And thinking that everybody that comes into that plant comes through security, which means security needs to be aligned. All the protocols need to be in place. The space and the division in the elevators. The plant's full of elevators. All of these rules had to be applied, but the most important part and the most important element is you needed people to listen, right? So if you don't have that, you can put as many barriers, pylons in place as possible. If the message is that it's not an option to do this, we have to do it safely. We need the work to progress, not with your life at sake, but we will do it in such a fashion that will put protocols in place to keep you protected, but we need you to keep to work.
Because you can't put a pause on the refurbishment of a nuclear unit. It has to continue forward. But like every other area in our sector, we have to also protect the people who are powering that work to take place. So you're talking behavioral change, which is one of the hardest changes to get buy-in on.
But and I will say, I mean, I've been with the Millwrights now 5 years. I have a ton of respect for building trades. Their ability, when needed, to fall in line. There I am with the arrow again, and follow what rules they need to keep safe and progress work. We couldn't do this without them.
Yeah.
And their commitment to work during that evolution, they weren't balking and saying, we can't come there. Were there concerns raised? Sure there were. They raised the concern, we address the concern, we fix it, we move forward. We had to do that daily, multiple times, to keep that work progressing. Had we not, to be able to say their celebration that we were ahead of schedule and under budget, we wouldn't be able to say the words.
Which is massive. For that project to have come in on time, under budget, it is incredible. I mean, something that was celebrated around the world within the nuclear sector that is not something to just walk past, and at a time when we were facing a pandemic, a global pandemic.
Correct.
So how important was it to be a leader that was highly effective? You got it done during that time.
You fall back on things in your life that, being an ex-policeman, I understood structure. I understood, that you have to have rules and rules have to be followed. When we started Unit 2, we had 3,000 trades on site. Think about that, 3,000 trades in a space that had to work. They had to follow the rules. They're in security protocols. There's areas in the plant that you can't go without certain permitry. They need to follow the rules like we all do. But some of them weren't like regular staff. They were new to the facility. So they had to learn to operate and work in a space. So without rules and structure and reinforcement of rules, it just wouldn't happen. So put COVID now and stack that on top, right? It meant to us, we can still move forward and keep this program running. We just have to make sure that we're doing it with trepidation and with applying the right level of rigor. And the trades did brilliant things, and they progressed work. So it was a very amazing thing to be part of.
You touched on something there, integration and onboarding. That is something that you also had an impact on during your tenure at OPG, was really looking at that system and, again, identifying gaps and improving that process. Is that true for me to say?
Yeah, I got tasked just prior to the refurb program that they were trying to build an onboarding system that would be more efficient, proficient to bring in this number of trades, because there's an implication of cost and delay at the front end. So I created a small team, built, designed, and launched an onboarding center in 6 months, which was kind of unheard of in that field. But again, sometimes it's not the ifs, it's the whens that you need to kind of apply a bit more and say, what that past protocol or process was might need to be tweaked and touched, because we are no longer going to have windows of time and inherent cost to the taxpayer that we can't afford to hold. So we came up with a process that was very safe. Obviously, we never ever impacted safety or risk on that front, but it became efficient, and that efficiency became, the best piece of us leading into that first unit, and then managing through it as we went. Another thing that I really thoroughly enjoyed, I don't know how much time we've got, Caitlin, but I initiated a daily fireside chat where I put a fireplace picture on the wall, and we stood there every morning at 8 o'clock. And we bounced and challenged each other. And the camaraderie, the integration, the problem solving, the unity of that team was an amazing thing to be part of.
And would you say that, going back to your conversations with Stu and his lesson that he embedded with you about making a decision and moving forward and understanding that sometimes making the decision is the most difficult part, how did you apply those lessons at a time like the pandemic, when you're making decisions in a time of sheer uncertainty, not only on supply chain and workforce, but I mean, world protocols were changing all of the time. There was just so much uncertainty. How do you make decisions and feel really great when you are in that kind of a environment?
Well, I think it applies to my life. I mean, if you don't make the decision and something happens, you'll be worse off than you would if you made the decision and something happens. There's a lot of people that freeze. I've seen 6 foot, 240-pound men freeze at a gun call. Why? Because sometimes that pressure is too big, and we're human. We are not robots yet, but these humans, unfortunately, have moments where they can't push, and that's where true leadership steps through and says, someone has to, it's like Braveheart. As much as we don't want to be reckless and running through something with a sword in our arm, sometimes you have to go forward. And, true leadership says the decision might ferret itself out to be wrong down the stream, but it is the decision at this moment, and we will now move. And, I've never had that fear. Don't know why. I can apply a whole bunch of reasons, I think, in my head. But I have a harder time not deciding and worrying that something's going to happen because I didn't than I have in making a decision and making an error. That's the hard part for me.
That's fair. A lot of people forget that there's a danger of not making a move.
A way riskier danger, because then you live with the guilt of standing still.
There's a cost to it.
Very much.
Yeah, the cost of not making
Whether
a decision.
it's life or money, there is a cost.
That's right. Staying in a situation, not staying in a situation, moving forward with something, not moving forward. there's always some sort of payback on the other side.
Yeah.
And now we transition a little bit. How did it come about that because you're technically retired now, although no one in nuclear
Ever retires.
We love this so much. That's what we'll, because no one retires here. Everyone just keeps going.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier, too.
Yeah. Is that how Millwrights came to be? Because obviously now you're here. You're no longer with OPG, and you're here with the Millwrights.
And even at OPG, I mean, it's like a game of musical chairs. And when the chairs start to run out, I had my hours. I had my time. I started so young that I was able to retire from my main career. Well, if policing wasn't a main career.
I was going to say, what one's the main one, Andy?
So leaving my OPG land, I was able to leave that at 52. I was very fortunate. And I thought I was done work. And, I didn't really have a plan to stay in the sector. I still have a box of cards at home that have a service in the Haliburton area that I would provide for winterization stuff. It's still sitting there with my other company name on it. But I received this call from the Millwright organization to see if I'd come and do business development with them. And I had a lot of faith in them. They were a lot of integrity in the organization, and they were able to problem solve with us when we had stuff that had happened. And, with members, things that happened with members, they were a very honest and truthful organization. And I thought, if I can help them, why not? So that was 5 years and 3 months ago. I guess that I left OPG, and I never planned on working, and I sure didn't plan on being here this long. But Nicole said it on the stage the other day. You just said it. There's something about the industry that keeps you hoping that there's always going to be a tomorrow, and we're all waiting for that next announcement. And
it's such an addictive industry.
It is.
And there's so much room for reinvention.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just so much. There's so many people I talk to who they start here, they go here, they go here. Number one, because we're a very connected industry.
Right.
And I think a lot of career progression is who you know sometimes, not what you know. It's the connections you make. It's the opportunities that arise from the people. But also because there's just so many doors you could walk through, and it's fun to walk through them.
Oh, it is. And, CNA was last week, I think it was.
Yeah, at the time of filming, yeah. Is it hard to believe? I feel like
I think
what a
my
whirlwind.
hand is still swollen. I've never shaken so many hands or hugged so many people. And I think there's the other part of it. You become a quasi-family. And,
yes.
And the nuclear family, it's hard to explain. And we're small. We're mighty. There's a lot of very intelligent people. There's a lot of very lovely people. But, when I was walking through the center the other day, I don't think I got 5 feet or 3 feet before I had to stop. And, it's like running the longest yard and being a turtle. Like you just can't get by. You can't get to the other side of the room, which is a beautiful feeling.
I love it about our industry.
And it's the network. And that network is sound and solid. And it's also, I'm trying to become part of the CNA team more. But across as we try to move across the country and look at Saskatchewan, we look at Alberta, I've had the luxury to go out there and represent the nuclear industry and having conversations with the political side of the business, because we know how important it is to us. We know where it sits in our hearts in Ontario. We want them to understand where it needs to sit in their heart when they go there, and we want to be part of that too, right? That's why we're CNA. It's not CNO. It's Canadian Nuclear Association, Canada. Right?
Yeah.
Team Canada, right? That's really who we are.
And it's such a beautiful time in our industry because I feel like there's an excitement with all of us now with this expansion and this openness to other parts of the country wanting to invite us in. But as you said, I feel like a broken record because time and time again on this podcast, the episodes always come back to the people. It is my favorite part of our industry. I think what we do as an industry is phenomenal. And so that only speaks more to the caliber of individuals in this. But there's a reason very few of us leave nuclear, right? We change jobs, but we don't usually change industry. Mm-hmm. And when you go to an event like the Canadian Nuclear Association Conference, which is up in Ottawa every year, it feels like a reunion of sorts. It feels like you're heading back to just this group of people and you can't wait to see them. Not only is the content and the sessions are amazing, but I love going and I get an excitement to go see my friends that are in the industry.
Yeah. No, like it's profound. The feeling when you get there, it reminds me of if you go to a resort all the time and you walk there and you knew everybody behind the bar, that's one thing. You get to see an A. And like I said, it's hugging and hands all day long and talking and stories and where you've been and how's your family. It's just beautiful.
It sounds like we're just two biased people talking about an industry that we're in. But I go to other events. I go to other industry conferences for some of my other clients and my when I have my marketing hat on. Mm-hmm. It's not like that everywhere else.
I had some semblance of that. The thin blue line when I was on the police force.
Yes.
And that's because you really need to protect each other.
That's a brother and sisterhood.
It's a tough industry as well. But, to have people this passionate about the nuclear world, my daughter, I think I told you, my daughter is now in the industry, drives my wife crazy because all we do is have nuclear speak and the acronyms coming out the wazoo. But to have her in the industry, she's a brilliant young lady. And, I don't know if you'd call her a young lady. She's
you can call her a young lady because you're your dad. You're always going to be older, and she is your daughter, your young daughter.
So she's in now, and she's involved in the Pickering refurb, and she's contributing a lot. And I know she will be a key player in the industry. She's very, very intelligent, and she's got a good number of years of grit from Dad. So she fights hard too when she needs to apply the right level of rigor and pressure. And at times she'll come home and she'll have that conversation like I had with Stu. It's like, Dad, I'm going to lose my mind. And I'll say, it's all right, baby girl. It'll go away.
The water's going to find its way down to the bottom of the hill. And so now I think I know this, and I'm going to say it, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. I would say what excites you the most right now about the future of the industry is the fact that we're handing it off to this next generation, including your daughter, and seeing what they carry forward with all of this momentum that is coming.
Can you imagine the excitement? She's only been enrolled a little over a year. And I'm going to say when, not if, but when we get up and running on Bruce C., when we get up and running on Wesleyville, their career is going to be in the industry, modeling and making this the next best generation after us and the generation after that, right? These units have been operating for 60 years, 55, 60 years for Pickering and Darlington. And, if you do the math, I'm not going to be around till these ones wrap up. You probably will because you're far younger than I am. But
not that much younger.
My daughter will pass that off to the next generation. She'll be sitting here having that podcast and talking about the hugs and the hands at these conferences. And the sheer belief in the purity of nuclear power and how it feeds us on such a stable platform that we can predict. We all need life to be predictable. And nuclear power is predictable power, right?
Baseload power. Nothing is consistent.
So why would we not support it? But you're right. I mean, I go to some of the younger generation meetings that they have at these different events, and you just sit there and your heart just flies out of your chest because they're already engaged.
I love that we're such an industry. We have a lot of Indigenous reconciliation within our industry. And one of the teachings of that comes with that Indigenous knowledge is, of course, the 7 generation, that thinking 7 generations ahead, 7 generations behind. We are so beautifully poised right now to be handing something off, not just for your daughter, the next generation, but 7 generations ahead. And again, just like safety, how we account for so much, we do that in all aspects of our industry. Is what does this look like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 generations down the line, and what are we doing today that will have impact? So I love that. I love that there's now 2 of you in this industry. I've yet to meet your daughter, but hopefully that happens sometime in the near future.
Well, I mean, you've got to spend some time over in Pickering. I mean,
That's right.
I had a walk down for my daughter.
Okay.
And one of our reps at the new Pickering training and kind of storage building, that was there. And the only thing I had to remind her is that today I'm not Dad, I'm Andy. And, what an amazing thing to do. Get this walk down and, you're sitting there and go, maybe at some point you'll have your next generation and you'll be doing the same thing. But, you know, the part that's impressive and that you and I talk about, and I now talk about with her, and is that the passion, I don't think will ever go away, right? It'll be passed upon, but the passion for people in this industry will never go away. And as the next generation comes forward, they're coming with a different set of ideas, and I always try to bounce mine off my kids because I'm getting older, and they have a different way to view things, and it's brilliant and beautiful, and that's probably why I haven't left yet. I think I have things to contribute, whether it's Stu contributing to me from a leadership side, it's some history, some vision of what we've gone through to understand where we need to go. But they're a smart gender. They're smart, not just genders, generation. They're a smart generation, and it's impressive because you know, look what we've transformed from. You know, when I started the police force, I didn't have a cell phone, right? You think the way that the stations used to run, the technology versus what they're now going to be running with. Like, it's just mind-blowing and then introduce AI to this. Like, it's making me grow hair or something. I don't know what's going on, but I'm all of a sudden excited.
No, I think it's amazing. I think anyone who gets even close to proximity of nuclear ends up kind of being sucked into the vacuum that is this because the energy is there. I mean, that's a funny figure of speech, but we've got good stuff going on over here. I am so happy that you're here in studio with me today. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a very fun chat. We kept it, I think, pretty online for us today. We didn't go off the rails too much. I'm proud of us.
It would probably be me if anyone went off the rail, but you know, I really appreciate. I want you to know I appreciate you, right? And you're a key component to the industry and just a super person.
I love that I'm here. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for being here, and thank you for splitting atoms with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. The Splitting Atoms podcast is produced by Splitting Atoms Media, a division of the Carolyn Corporation. All of our conversations are made possible through the support of our founding partner, the Nuclear Innovation Institute.